thanks. Hi, Doug Smith here from HoloPundits, Columbus, Ohio. And I spent the first 10 years of my adult career developing community-based programs for high schools students, talking about building community equity and relationship equity through respectful relationships. And I took that and kind of dovetailed it into the immersive tech space where I'm at now, helping customers understand how to build equity within their projects. Yep.
Hi, is my mic on? Oh, there we go. Hi, I'm Dana Ware, and I am Latina. I'm originally from Los Angeles, born and raised. I currently live in Utah. I'm the creative director of The Void, and we specialize in LBE VR. Sorry. I also have 2 master's degrees. One is in film and new media, and the other one is in engineering with a specialty in game development. And I'm happy to be here today.
Hey guys, ooh, that is loud. Hey guys, Adrian Driscoll here, the co-founder and head of Immersive at Collimation. Immersive media expert, which isn't really impressive, I'm just a nerd. But I travel the world really trying to help people understand how to bring community and how to bring equity into the metaverse and through their current applications. So one thing that people often don't understand is what is equality and what is equity? What is this really? So equality is if all of us get a bowl of rice and a set of chopsticks. That's fair, right? Equity is understanding that some people can't use chopsticks. Some people need a fork, right? So you have to understand the tools that other people need in order to succeed at what they're trying to do. And sometimes those tools look very different. And unfortunately, most big companies don't give a fork.
One of the things that we really wanted to address in this topic as well, we don't have enough time to go over all of the different ways that equity and inclusion really are played out within our roles of hiring and interviewing and the processes we go through from the pre-production all the way to the end of a product and what that life cycle looks like. But one of the statistics that we kind of wanted to point out here is the gender gap. And when we're talking about the gender gap, really looking at specifically how... We're just going to give you another mic. Oh, okay. Thank you. Whoa. Specifically looking at how 48% of game players are actually female. And out of the, all of the developers there are who are creating video games, there's only 22% of women creating games. And out of those 22% of women creating games, there's 47% of them have had some type of inequality or something that happened to them that made them feel like they were treated differently or had different opportunities getting into the industry. So some really shocking numbers when we look at it. And how that actually plays out as far as what type of characters are being represented within these games, what type of stories are being told, and what type of representation we have in these games. There's a really close correlation between who's making the games, what stories we're telling in these games. So really important to kind of recognize where some of these numbers are hitting so that we can be a little bit more mindful as we're going into the hiring process as hiring managers.
Now, some numbers that are probably even more crazy is you look at the amount of people that are Black in the gaming foundation. 2% of professionals in the gaming industry are Black. 2%, right? 2.4% of the total capital raised, that's just 2015, 2021, went to Black and Latinx founders. So you think, how can we build a community when we are not including a large part of our community? How do you provide true equity? How are you going to have a game with characters that are Black or Latinx when they don't look and they don't have a feel? You can't relate to them directly, and that's one of the disparities that we're seeing.
Imagine for a second that you're in a power position hiring a new employee for your company. You get a candidate in front of you, who's homeless? Raise your hand if you would seriously consider that person as a qualified candidate. Maybe a couple, yeah. Anybody in this room ever been homeless? Right, so we take a look at that and we see that, even though each of us has a unique path and our perspectives are all different, right? There's certainly some value in approaching every single person as a unique person and giving everybody a chance. So let's hear a little bit more about that.
So, as hiring managers, we all know that there's this huge push for us to be more inclusive and diverse with our candidates. We were really kind of encouraged these days to hire people from diverse backgrounds. Well, the reality is that people with diverse backgrounds might not have traditional backgrounds. And coming into this emerging technology space, we recognize the fact that all sorts of people from different backgrounds, different types of potential work experience or educational experiences are coming, and they're wanting to become a part of this emerging field, right? This emerging technology field. Well, that means that not everyone's going to have the exact same resume. They're not going to have the same story on that resume. They're not going to have the same timeline of their education. They might have some different types of ways that they got to where they're at today, some different types of experiences in their lives that kind of made it so that they had to do certain things, maybe not the way that you are used to seeing, maybe not the way that most of your fellow coworkers got into the field. But that doesn't mean that that is a liability. We really need to look at those diversities, those different types of backgrounds, as something that's an asset, brings different types of perspectives to the table and different types of voices to the table so that we can be inclusive with the type of content that we're creating and the stories that we're telling. So we really need to recognize some of these internal biases that we have as hiring managers as we go through these processes. Oh, actually, I forgot, sorry. I also wanted to take just a moment to say thank you to all of the mentors, professors, employers, and colleagues that took a chance on someone like me that didn't have a traditional background, that had to kind of do things a little bit differently in order to get to where I am today. And I'm incredibly grateful for all of those opportunities because it was a very hard and long road and not an easy one to navigate.
And so now we're talking about immersive tech and emerging technologies and understanding that there are industries, institutions, organizations, companies out there looking for those diverse backgrounds, looking for those different perspectives, those unique perspectives. And folks in this room, whether you come from a diverse background, whether you're in a hiring position, whether you're working with clients, I think the industry's right at the tip of the spear where we can provide equity in the new immersive technologies. A couple clients I work with, Ohio State University in Columbus, they're leading the way with barriers to care and using immersive technology to help their employees, their nurses, their doctors, the staff, to understand why individuals might have barriers to care and how to interact with individuals of all backgrounds and all experiences so that they can give the care that they need to give to treat everybody appropriately. The great state of Tennessee is leading the way with their developmental disabilities department. And individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, the state saw that you can use immersive and virtual reality to show those individuals looking to get into the workforce what those jobs look like. Otherwise, those individuals wouldn't maybe understand those jobs or know what those jobs look like to even consider those positions in the workforce ahead of time. So it really has helped using the immersive technology. And those are two of many, many, many samples. If you don't have diversity and inclusion and equity built into your organizational plan, I don't know of any organizations at this point that don't. So they're out there and there are going to be more and more. So if you're sitting in this room, use your diverse backgrounds interact with folks with those unique experiences and perspectives that can help build those projects.
So there's quite a few red flags that we can kind of look for as people who are going in for an interview. Some of those red flags might look something like being asked to take lower pay or a lower title for a position that you have been interviewing for. So you get down to the end of the wire and all of a sudden things change with the agreement of the terms to being hired. That's might be a red flag. That might be something that you need to be mindful of. There's a lot of different websites that can tell you what type of questions are actually inappropriate to be asked during an interview. And as hiring managers, we need to know what those questions are and how they can actually bring up some of these internal biases that we have. They lead us down paths that might actually make it uncomfortable for the person that we're interviewing to be able to respond respectfully without exposing maybe some of the diverse reasons for why their background might look a little bit different. So it's really important for us, not only on the side of hiring, but also interviewing, to know really what it is that's appropriate treatment through these processes. So we didn't want to just talk about all of the despairingly different types of things that happen through these processes, and without giving you some tools to kind of work from and with. We can't go through all of them individually and in detail, but I just kind of wanted to call out a few things here. Getting a mentor who you can do a sanity check with to ask whether or not something was appropriate is actually a really healthy way of kind of checking to see, was that just me reading into something, or was that actually an inappropriate question? Did I put myself in a scenario, or are they asking me to do something that they really should be paying me to do, or something that was just inappropriate through that process? There's also a lot of legislation that's been passed that sometimes we're not really aware of, but on both sides of the fence of hiring or being interviewed, that really requires employers who are offering positions to expose what their pay scale is for that particular position, especially if you've had at least one interview with that company for that position. They're supposed to tell you. So knowing if you're in one of those states or cities that has that type of legislation can actually help you leverage the scenario a little bit better. And then also, there is a pay gap. We all know that. There's statistics and numbers to prove that. Something that you can do to help kind of navigate that space when you're going in for a role or at a new company is the visa applications that people have to apply for actually has a database of all of the different salaries for different companies. What someone applied for, what their title was, how much their salary is, and what particular company it's at. So you can kind of do a reference check so that you know whether or not you're asking for an appropriate amount without having to, maybe you don't know anyone in the industry quite yet. Maybe this is your first time moving into the industry and you're trying to get a good foothold as to what you should be asking for. This is a great resource in order to do that.
So, anybody ever watch Indiana Jones movies? Indiana Jones fans? Yeah, we got some downstairs. So, if you follow the Indiana Jones series, there's a prequel that happened of young Indiana Jones. They made it in the 90s, early 90s after the movies. And I was watching that. I just happened upon it a couple weeks ago. We were preparing for this presentation, and it was just after World War I. Young Indiana Jones was in the World War I. He was a big, he was a captain in it. And he had been in the Allies, had won. He was talking with a buddy after the war, and he said, "We just gave the old men a victory, and they threw it away. We offered them a new world, and they made the old one over again." And that really stuck to me with this conversation, because we're on the edge of a new world in the metaverse and virtual reality, immersive technologies. And we can create, hopefully, a new world in that isn't the old one. I mean, we can avoid those same dumb mistakes that we keep doing and keep doing and keep doing. So really challenging us as a group, as an industry, to take advantage of this new step forward.
There's a joke by comedian Roy Woods Jr., and it's about a black guy who only got 5 McNuggets, right? And he went instantly to the topic of, oh, they're racist, they're racist. If I was white, I would have got 7 nuggets. And I think it's very important that we, as employers and, on the other side, employees, we identify, or we try to identify, not everything's racist, not everything is, not everything is an attack towards you. Not everything is personal. There's ignorance, and then there's, offense is taken, not given. And that's when you reach out to the resources like your mentor and say, hey, was this bad, or am I projecting? Or did I automatically think that something was going to come from this that was negative? So it's really important to look at this, because fear doesn't build community. Okay, not looking racist isn't the goal. You want to understand. Understanding builds communities.
True.
I really like this quote. It says, privilege is not knowing that you're hurting others and not listening when they tell you. So it's really important for us to try to create environments where people feel safe enough to tell you when they feel like they're not being heard. Oftentimes we talk about wanting to have inclusivity. Well, this is part of that, is letting people have a voice and giving them an opportunity to express that other viewpoint that they might have. Mm-hmm. It's not easy to set up an inclusive environment or a safe environment, but if you can do it, you're probably going to be able to have a higher retention of the people who are working for you. You might not, have most of your women or people of color come in for only a year and then leave automatically. So the turnover rate is really, it's hard to train people. It's hard to have new people come in and out of a company. But if we can make people feel safe and feel included and respected for their voice, then it's going to be a lot easier for us to retain them in the industry. So, this slide got a little messed up. Okay. Here are a list of a few different resources and organizations that are out there. We know that we did not cover even a small percentage of this topic. There's so much that can be said about how we can be inclusive, how we can figure out what those internal biases are and recognize them, the different types of training that we can do. So we have a list of resources and different organizations. There's so many nonprofits out there where you can go and they'll help give you the tools or have a community for you so that you can do some of that sanity check with that community, post about or ask questions about something that happened in an interview or something that happened at your job, your current location, and get some feedback so that you can understand whether or not it was something that maybe shouldn't have been offensive or really is something that you need to be aware of. That weird feeling that you had, and that was a clue that you should kind of dig into that a little bit more. Oftentimes people don't recognize that they're being discriminated against until somebody else points it out to them. And we need to be able to build communities where we can support each other and help each other. A lot of these organizations are doing that. And so we thought it was really important to kind of list them, and hopefully this is just a few of the people that we know that are trying to make an impact in this space and supply you with the resources and tools that you need. If any of you want to, please reach out to any of us up here. We know that this conversation is pretty short, and so there's a lot to dive into. And if you guys have any questions, please reach out. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was an incredible talk and so important. And I really appreciate you putting up all these resources for all of us and for being here today. And we might have time for one question. Is there any questions from the audience? We do have one question. Okay, great. All right, so I think he beat you too. Come on, we can maybe take a couple. It's okay.
We can take a couple.
We can take a couple. We have 5 minutes before the next talk starts.
So, Adrian, 2%. Holy shit.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. I've been an employer for the last 25 years, and maybe the first third half of my career was spent in Atlanta, which obviously has a very high black population. And
Right.
so I wasn't as privy to that there, and then moved to San Diego and LA and didn't notice.
Yeah.
Which is I'm ashamed of it, but I guess my question though is why is that? Why is it so low? And then sort of the follow-up is how as employers do we help change that? And I ask that because I feel like part of the answer to the first one, which I obviously will defer to you, but it involves on the education side, what programs they're taking and all that stuff. But
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. I mean, to address this, people are looking like, hey, well, we need to give more black people VR headsets, and forgetting that there are a lot of people who don't have internet. Like, you have to look at the foundational issues, that are, some are systematic, some are location, but there's so many issues that you have to look at the ground level. And I've heard high-profile black associations say, oh, well, black people don't like VR. It's like, what? What are you talking about? So getting rid of these assumptions is the way to get past it. Getting rid of these biases and thinking about another culture or another person, get rid of that. Ask, and that's the whole way to start. I love the question.
Hello, I'm Ruth. Hi.
Hey, Ruth.
Very beautiful talk. Thank you. Can tell you all have connected and did this together, which creates a sense of safe space, by the way. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm curious about any comments you might have on the exhaustion of the inequity and how you either are working to change that in the settings you're working in, or how you are developing your own networks to cope with that.
Yeah, so it's a wonderful question. I really appreciate it. Because unfortunately, it is exhausting, right? It's hard to be the only woman in the room, or I'm very white passing, but I am very much a Latina. I have that cultural trauma that comes with some of that as well. So sometimes it's hard to be the only person in the room that might have to point out the inequity that's being presented in a situation or a story or a character or whatever it might be. So what I try to do is hopefully cultivate relationships with the people that I'm sitting in the room with, so that I find the allies who will support me and will listen. Try to figure out how to approach the conversation appropriately, because I've had people in the past say, why is it that, people of color are so angry all the time? That I've had that. Even prepping for this talk, one of my friends was like, well, you don't want to come across like an angry brown girl, And I was like, ooh, okay. So, you have these assumptions, or you have these projections that are placed on you. And I think what it comes down to is trying to find your voice, but also trying to be respectful while you have that voice. Understanding that people from diverse backgrounds or cultural trauma maybe never had an opportunity to have therapy or work through some of those societal hurdles that were placed upon not just them, but generational systemic racism or inequity. and understanding that it takes a lot of work and tools to be able to get to a place where you find your own healing, to be able to start having those conversations with others too. So sometimes it's finding that safe space, finding that mentor, and finding organizations that will help you kind of build those tools within yourself as well.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Round of applause, everyone. Thank you. Great.